What's all good, everyone? Shane here for Shane's Camera and Photo. Today I'm going to show you a little tutorial on how I get color negatives digitized without a scanner. Now there's a little bit of work involved, and there is something you have to get. And the first thing, of course, is you're going to be using a smartphone. I have currently, this is the Moto Z Play from 2016. You can use Android or Apple. You can usually get any type of a photo editing software free from Google Play or the App Store. Today I'm going to be using the camera app Open Camera, which I like over the stock factory camera in the smartphone, just because it kind of allows me to have a little bit more control over the exposure of the image from the camera rather than what's stock in Android. Now, the camera apps that come factory stock on certain phones varies, of course, from year to year. But I use Open Camera, and I'm going to try and show you if it can focus. It's a little blue icon here, and you can find that one. It's free. You can get it off of Google Play. I'm pretty sure you get it off of the App Store. I haven't checked the App Store because I don't own anything that requires the App Store. So if you have iOS devices, you could check, see if they have Open Camera, or you can find another more open source camera, because this is an open source variant of a camera app. The other application I'm going to be using is an app called Pixlr, and I'm going to show you the icon. It's right here, this little gray box with a colorful shutter aperture right there. You get that one for free off of Google Play as well. Yeah, I suspect it's also off of the App Store. And I'm going to be doing all the editing of the film that I take a picture of using the Open Camera app. I'm going to bring it into Pixlr, and I'm going to edit it there. Now, just as a little bit of a heads up, this particular negative, this particular sizable piece of negative was shot on a Kodak 126 camera, so I had pretty much lomographied it. I taped out the back window of the camera, because 126 film has a paper backing to count for all of the exposures on the camera. It's a square frame camera, and you can put a film canister in there. If you modify the canister, there's videos on YouTube of that. I'll probably make that's how I did it. There was a video on YouTube, and I saw it, and I just followed the steps, and it did work. I might do another tutorial. I might do a tutorial on how I did that, but it would just be repeating the same video. I'll try and find the video. I'll put a link of it in the description. So, yeah, let's get this started. Alright. So another thing you're going to need in order to do this properly is you're going to need a really bright white light source. I'm going to be using this light box. This is just a traditional light box you'd use for sketching. You can use it to look at negatives. I'm going to be using it to actually have the light come through the negative, so my camera can get the frames here. And it's going to be a little wonky because, one, it is for tracing, and that's going to probably blur it out. There we go. You see it's very bright, and you can kind of see from there what's on the negatives. Now, again, this is a lomographied variant of a shoot I did. So there's going to be double exposures, there's going to be light leaks. All of that was wanted just for the artistic effect of what it can do. So we're going to jump into it. So first things first is you're going to find the frame or the image you want to capture. Because this one kind of was a long, continuous stream of a shot, like it was just double exposure, triple exposure, all the way down the line. I did try and get a couple regular frames, but I think those ones were a little dark. So I'm starting to look around for what I want to basically use. And so I'm going to probably take just a small segment of this area here because my camera on the phone, even with the app, it only can do take a frame of so wide because it is just a basic phone camera. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. So I'm going to get to my home screen here, and I'm going to access Open Camera. And it's already, I don't know if this is picking up on the camcorder I'm using, but it is picking up a lot of the negative, depending on how far and how close I hold it. Now, this is Open Camera when it's open. You have your shutter button, you have your camera zoom, you have different modes you can set through infinity focus here, your macro focus, lock fits focus. Then you have your controls for your flash. You have variable resolution options and light balance options here. I usually just keep it auto because the phone, my particular camera, is a 16 megapixel camera on this Moto, and it really delivers good, rich, deep images. Although they're not extremely big, they do produce very good colors and contrast right out of the camera. And this is shooting JPEG. I do not believe that there is a way I can do RAW on this one. I have looked into it, and I don't think there really is a RAW format. There are some camera apps that do say that they do RAW, but I think it's mostly due with your camera's software on the phone. So you have to look into your particular camera on your phone to see what it's capable of doing and what the processor of your phone is capable of producing. So I'm going to keep that unlocked. I'm going to tap that again. So this is your white balance and your ISO. I keep ISO on auto. I keep the EV or exposure value right dead center because I don't want anything other than the light coming through to be what affects the negative. So it is a little bit of you're leaving with a chance, but since you're looking at the preview anyway before you hit the picture, you use the shutter, it's okay because if you do have to adjust it, you can just quickly adjust it left and right. You can kind of see how that works. Okay, bet that to 0. Alright, so I usually turn the camera on the side to try and get a wider frame. And you're going to tap to try and get the negative or the area of the negative that you want in focus. I'm going to turn off this overhead light because of how negatives are. It does have a reflection. The plastic does reflect off the negative of any lights that are above the negative. So when I do that, I don't want to get any excess light spots on the negative. And now I'm just doing this kind of roughly, and I don't have a piece of glass to put on this to flatten the negative. So it is going to look a little bit curved, but sometimes that effect is just, you have to accept that if you don't have anything like that, or you don't want to put tape across it to make it flat, you're going to have to accept that you're going to probably have to deal with strange shaped negatives. So I'm just going to snap that picture. Alright, that looks like it took. And tap that real fast. Yeah. So it looks like I did get really good contrast, and it looks like I'm going to be able to edit the colors. This is great. Alright. Now I'm going to take you in the Plitzer, load the photo in, and I'll show you how I do this. Alright, so now I'm going to open the photo in Plitzer. So I'm going to go to my folder that contains it, open Plitzer, and you'll be greeted by the home screen. I'm going to tap on photos. I'm just going to make sure there's nothing weird. Yeah, okay, good. I'm going to tap on the photo. It's going to open. So here's the photo as it's opening in Plitzer. So just how any of you guys who really know photo editing, there is one thing I want to give a little quick note on, is that, cell phone screens, they have backlight things going on that might not be true to value what the image will be if you see the file in a fully calibrated monitor, such as if you upload it to Instagram via the app for mobile. If you look at it on the computer, it might be different contrasts and colors depending on the monitor. So you will probably get variable degrees, but on cell phones and things that have backlights, depending on how bright the backlight's set on every individual's cell phone, you're going to get slightly different, or you're going to be able to see what's going on. So for this, I'm going to bump the brightness up just a little bit on my screen just so I can see what's going on. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go where these little circles are, and I'm going to hit rotate, because how this phone saved this was it flipped it over it does that sometimes, and I think that's just a thing with the cell phone and the communication between the phone, the camera, and the app. So I just hit rotate until it looks correct, because these look like trees in the background, so that might be correct, might not be correct, but to me it looks like that's the sky up there, and those are trees. So, and you can tell there's light leaks and different color bleeds here and there. So I'm just going to hit the check mark to say, okay, that's how I want it. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to crop as much of the white out, because I really don't want that. I'm okay with the sprogger holes, because I like showing people that it is a piece of film, just to let them know that no, this isn't some sort of weird painting I've done. So again, hit the circle parts down here, because this is going to open up your basic editing tools: double exposure, crop, rotate, adjustments, which I'm going to get to next. Auto fit, auto contrast, blur, smooth, sharpen, heal, splash, red eye. These are your traditional tools that you would see in many photo editors, such as Photoshop, GIMP, and Lightroom, and all that kind of stuff. This is just basically a mobile variable that's different, because of course it's not made by Adobe or any of those other guys. So I'm just going to go to adjustments right here in the second row, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the exposure, and I tend to see if I bump up the exposure a little bit, get more depth on it, and I do get a little bit, so I'm going to bump it up a little bit. I'm not going to go extreme, because it'll basically blow it out if I go too high, even though that might make a really cool looking image. But I'm going to bring that back down to where I get more, you can see a little bit more of the detail. And it might be a little hard to see on this particular camcorder, because this is an older camcorder, so it's not going to be 4K or anything like that. It'll probably be HD at best. I mean, it is an HD camera, but still. So that looks good. I'm going to go to temperature. Now, usually I don't mess with the temperature until after I've started messing, until I've gotten at least reversed. And so once I get the exposure right, I just hit the check mark. So we're going to come back to the rest, but first I'm going to go to this little square button in the middle. Oh, haha, exit out of the program. Very funny, Shane. I'm going to hit this little double square diamond shaped right here in the above the button that takes you back to your menu, because this is going to bring up all the different filters. So in Blitzer, you're going to have your default filters, and it goes all the way through different monochromatic and vintage and all these other, think of it like Snapchat, I guess, really is the best way. But I go to the filter set called Atomic, because on that one it has the ability to do something called negative, which reverses all the colors and everything, which is what I'm going to want. So it's going to reverse it like so. Boom. I know, it's like, well, that doesn't really look great yet. Yeah, of course it's not. I haven't done all the fun things yet. So I'm just going to have it full blast for the filter, because I need it full blast. Because if you do anything less, it just bleeds it out. So I just leave it on full on the negative filter, and I hit the check mark. So now I'm going to go back to those two circles and hit adjustments again. Now the first thing I am going to do is I'm going to go to the highlights. And I always knock the highlights down and also the shadows, just because it's a negative, and for some reason it doesn't, in this program, the highlights and shadows really don't have much of an effect on the negative, I've noticed, unless you're doing monochromatic black and white film. And then it kind of does, but with color film, you don't really need it. So I just knock it all the way down to nothing. And then I come back to temperature, and I'm going to start messing around with the temperature. And usually this will give me more contrast or something like that. See, you can see as I'm adjusting it a little bit more warmly, it's bringing out some detail in it, and it's also bringing out some of the light leaks and all that fun stuff. What's that right there? So you can kind of see some of these weird dots, and I think that's some light pollution from my room, unfortunately. But that's fine. I'll just tell people, hey, that was just a weird light leak, and just go from there. So going to contrast, bumping contrast also does the same thing as bringing in and out of some of the detail. And I've noticed with doing color negative that a lot of the contrast, when you go down a little bit, brings out more detail in the negative. But you can't go down too far because then it starts graying everything out because of how contrast works. So brightness, I do start bumping it up a little bit, but not too much, because you don't want to blow it out, but you also want to get kind of more light behind it, because you are going to need the light in order to bring the colors out. So vibrance. Vibrance works either in, you can kind of start seeing when I adjust the vibrance, it either brings out the colors really bright or it starts muting them a bit. And I mute the colors because I'm going to put more filters on that kind of bring the colors out positively. And so in order for that to happen, I need the vibrance down. So saturation is usually another odd thing to happen because it's negative and it's not the correct colors yet. So if you bump saturation up, then you're going to basically just have weird negated colors. But as you see, as I bring the saturation down, it starts giving me some color to it, but still negative. So I just leave the saturation at 0. 0. And I go to hue. Now hue is going to be what changes a lot of the negativity. You don't have individual RGB control, unfortunately, in this app. So what will give you kind of the RGB control is the filters, and it's kind of a hit or miss sometimes. So at least this way I can start adjusting the colors that kind of balance properly. So, and it doesn't tell you the color, it just gives you the numerical value on the top like all the other sliders. But I'm going to do that next. So I'm going to keep the saturation and hue at 0 and hit the check mark. I'm going to go back to filters real fast. Now, I've noticed that if you want proper exposure, you gotta get the sprockets to be pretty black, or close to grayish black as possible. So I'm going to start going through some of the filters here because some of them start correcting things properly. And usually I use Hagrid because there's one right here called Hagrid because it does kind of balance out colors properly. And alright, it looks like that's bringing out some detail in the trees and everything like that. You can definitely see the trees here. So I'm going to hit OK. So now that I got it like that, I'm going to go back to adjustments, and I'm going to start playing with the color and all that kind of stuff as much as possible. Usually you're not going to get an extremely proper color out of the negative, but you can get pretty close. And sometimes it does take some playing around to get everything to a proper color. Now I developed this film 2 days ago or so, and I shot the film a year ago. Well, a little under a year ago. So I do not correctly remember what colors the trees and everything are supposed to be. So I'm just going to go off of the best guess I can get from it, which is going to be probably it'll probably be have some sort of a color issue, because with the program you're not going to get a true color reversal. You're just going to get really close to it because you don't have RGB or CMYK control on this app. Like you can do this is basically adjusting the tints in some monocolors, but you don't have channels, unfortunately. If you have a Lightroom, what is it, the CC or the Classic for your phone, I'm sure you can do it, the RGB and the CMYK channels on that one. I don't have it myself because I don't have a subscription. It's maybe in the future I will, but for right now I'm just using this. So I'm going to try and maybe bump it to blue. And again, I do not know the colors of what this was supposed to be exactly, but now that I'm looking, I think I might have actually have it upside down. So sometimes when you start reversing the colors and everything, you start noticing the details a little bit more, and you can see these trees are actually upside down. So I didn't have it flipped the right way, but I can still adjust the colors a little bit good. In fact, you're starting to see over here on this, it's really kind of blown out on the camcorder, but from my perspective, I'm seeing it's starting to get the blueness of the sky. So that's starting to look proper. That's starting to look a little gray, like it's overcast. There's some blue in the sky here, and so that means playing with the blue a little bit is adjusting the slider over to blue a little bit has allowed me to get some proper color out, and I'm seeing the proper reds of the light leaks. So now it's just adjusting it to get it properly. And a lot of times, and you'll know if you're getting something wrong, because then you'll start seeing less of a single color come through, multiple color come through, and you're going to start seeing more of a single color. If I go too far this way, it's going to start getting purple. If I start going this way, it's going to get a little too, ocean blue to greenish. So from right there, that looks pretty correct with that. So I'm going to go back to saturation and try and play a little bit more saturation up and down. See if I can bring out, no, the more saturation, at least you're going to probably bring out more blue. So not the saturation down quite a bit. So it looks like this negative is going to actually have a white negative sprocket, which I guess makes sense because in some of my how I developed this, I don't know if I did it 100% right. I used the C41 developing kit from the Purist. They're out of Chicago. If any of you guys are watching from Chicago and you have done anything with the Purist, then you've probably, it's good stuff, good kit, but it's my first time doing color development. A lot of my other negatives that I've reversed were developed at a lab called Coastal, which they're out of Florida. I'll link their website too in the description if you want to get some color negative developed and you don't do it at home. So this is starting to look correct. So I'm going to go back to temperature, and I'm going to start playing with the temperature again. And you can see that the colors have shifted again when I play with the temperature. If I make it cooler, it's more blue, but if I start going more towards warm, we're going to get, for this particular film, which this was a Fuji Superior 400, you're starting to see that there's more colors coming through the more warm I go. You can see kind of the blueness of the sky over here. I hope that's not too blown out on the video. I'll take a look. And you can start seeing some of the green of the trees. That's good. So another thing I'm going to do, I'm going to play with the exposure a little bit more. So another thing to note is every time you hit this little check mark, it sets whatever you've done in that session of whatever you're trying to do, and it permanently sets it into the file. So it's not like I'm adjusting the exposure again from the first time I showed you from adjusting the exposure, but I am adjusting the exposure for a second time in a new layer. You don't have control of layers, unfortunately, on the app, but you know, you learn to use it as best you can. So dropping the exposure a little bit brings about more independent colors out of the film. And then I'm going to go back to contrast. This is a whole new contrast. And I'm going to bump up the contrast a little bit, so you're starting to see a little bit more of the detail. And if I lose a little bit of detail in the attempt to get more of the color correctness, then that's okay. Even if you go into a dark room and you're going to enlarge images, you have to play with the color heads on the enlarger. So there's a lot going on here. So this is basically me trying to do an enlargement, but not really an enlargement on a phone. So going back to brightness, sometimes if you go a little bit more brighter, you can start bringing out more color, but you can't go too far because you start blowing it out again. And you want more detail sometimes too. So vibrance, boom. You can start seeing the blues and the clouds and the trees. That's looking really good. Highlights. If I bring the highlights down again, get more color, but that's too dark, so I'm going to bring the highlights back up a little bit. Shadows are going to bump up this time. Boom, boom, boom. You're starting to see the colors come out. Saturation, lightness. Lightness just kind of overall just makes the entire, whatever your image is, lighter or darker, and it doesn't really have anything to do with the brightness, so you have to kind of pay attention to that. So that's looking good. I'm going to hit OK and cement that. Oh, no, I don't want that. I'm going to go back to my adjustments. I'm going to go back to rotate. I'm going to rotate it once again, so you can kind of start seeing the images. Oh, nope. I didn't cement that. There we go. So you can kind of see that there is now positive color and positive images there. They are double negatives and there's light leaks because, again, this is more of a lomographied variant of a shoot where I put 135 film into a 126 camera. You know, I try to do block as much light out of the back of the camera, but it was a Kodak Instamatic X15F, which is, I can just show you the camera real fast. This isn't the exact one I used. I have a few of them. So this is the camera I used, and if I open up the camera, you can see that it's actually for a cartridge rather than roll film. And I just fixed the roll film, the 135 canister, to fit into the sprocket area. Went into a dark room, pulled out all the negatives, spooled it over here because this is going to rewind the film back into the canister as you shoot. So it was good, but I knew there's going to be light leaks, but it's kind of an experiment to see what you can do with some of these cameras. I wish Kodak or someone would bring back 126 film because it was really fun, but Kodak's doing weird things right now, and we'll see what happens. But another fun thing is that there are places like Lomography who does every now and then bring back a different film format, such as they do have like 620 film and 110 film. There are people who have themselves cut film down to Cine 16, and they've cut down film and they put it on 127, and they've done things for Cine 16. So there are people out there doing this, and there are companies that are smaller and have been doing this for a couple of years now. It's a little expensive because it is a little bit more of an effort for them to respool and make new paper backings and stuff. But doing it kind of a little modified way, you can find tutorials on how to shoot 135 or 35mm film in these cameras all throughout YouTube. So you can find the tutorials on it, and you just search on YouTube or Google how to shoot 35mm film in 126 cameras, and you'll get a whole bunch because people have been doing this for a while. So, and you will see that this is positive and pretty close to color correct. Now, again, like I said, I can't get it 100% because I don't have absolute control using this app. But with this app, it's a free app, and you can do somewhat of a pseudo scan and image editing on it. So thanks for stopping by and trying and seeing this tutorial. Sorry if I stuttered a little bit. Just a little bit of when I'm doing this kind of stuff, I just get lost in my track of thought. So if this helps, give it a like, share it around. I'll try and eventually get better editing software so so my videos aren't as crappy. But thanks for putting up with what I can do for right now. I'm Shane, and this has been Shane's Camera and Photo. Thanks for stopping by. Bye.